All right, so this is like a really hard vlog to film. So I made a vlog in December of 2023 that went over my 48 hours of being on an endometriosis medication called my Fembry that made me suicidal for 48 hours. You can go watch that one if you want. I think personally it was a really important vlog to watch because it talked about how to support someone who has severe depression and suicide, and also talked about the risks of, like, it was a huge percentage of medication has that risk of severe depression or suicidal thoughts. I think it was just a really important vlog to watch. So definitely, if you haven't already, I would suggest go watching it. But also, I understand that you have to be in the right headspace to watch it, because I was really emotional and it was a really hard vlog to film, let alone edit, because it was like right after it had happened. So that happened, right, like 6 months ago. Then I went off of that med and the thoughts got better. However, it almost had developed a pattern in my brain that was now like a groove that was just there. And it was unfortunate because it was almost just like this voice that the medication created was now a voice in my head. It wasn't intrusive and it was so much quieter, but it was almost still like a voice that would speak up sometimes if I was having like a hard moment. So that was really difficult because it would say stuff like, you know, you're a burden, the world would be better without you, you're taking resources away from other people, and you should just, you know, stop being here. And that's really sad. It's very traumatic to go through that. And also, you know, I reached out to a couple people when I was suicidal, and for whatever reason, either my fault for not expressing it well, I mean, I told people like, hey, I'm on a med that I think is giving me severe depression and suicidal thoughts, and I felt like that was pretty clear because it is really hard for me to ask for help or support. And when I'm in crisis, it's gonna be really difficult to like express what's going on for me. And a lot of people, I think there was one person and then my parents who took it seriously, but most people are just like, oh my gosh, that sucks, I'm so sorry, and then kind of moved on in the conversation. For whatever reason, maybe they just didn't have the capacity to deal with that right now, whatever, that's fine. But it almost unfortunately reinforced in my brain, like, yeah, you know, no one cares. No one would mind if you weren't here. And I know that that's not truth. I know that that's not correct. But depression and these medications make you listen to that voice as if it is the truth and that those are your thoughts, even though it's this other voice that's the meds. So I was off of any suppression med for endometriosis for about a month and a half, and then getting into February, maybe about 2 months, and then getting into February, I started an injection med called Zoladex. And I don't think I've said the name of this med on my channel yet, but that is the medication that is actually an implant injection. So they inject this implant that is the size of a grain of rice by needle into your stomach every 4 weeks or every 3 weeks. So my first 2 injections were every 4 weeks, and then I was having what we thought was breakthrough pain from the endometriosis, which I think it was, and then we shortened it to every 3 weeks because my endo doctor said, like, actually this med starts running out after 3 weeks, and so it really, let's try to do 3 weeks and maybe it'll stop your pain. It didn't stop the pain, unfortunately, and so then I had 2 more injections that were every 3 weeks before I ended up having my endometriosis surgery, which was laparoscopy and hysteroscopy surgery. I had done some research into this because I was so nervous about what meds cause more depression or more suicidal thoughts. So I did my research on this, and this med did have a history of it. Depression is a common side effect for this med, and 0.52% of people on this med also have reported having suicidal thoughts. And those are just the reported ones. Who knows how many go unreported. And I tend to have the 1% or less than 1% of side effects or symptoms. It's a whole thing. Even from supplements, I'll have crazy side effects from supplements. So I was aware of this. I went into this, the doctor telling me, like, look, this is not going to give you a side effect because it bypasses your liver, because it's not an oral medication, it is an implant, and so it shouldn't give you this side effect. I'd also done some research, and a study showed that, like, most people don't have any of these feelings the first month on it. It's normally months 1 to 6 that people develop suicidal thoughts. So I was keeping an eye on it, and I would say it was a slow build. I slowly developed more severe depression over the time I was on the Zoladex, and then it got to the point point where it was probably 3 or 4 months in, and it was right up against my endometriosis surgery time, so we were just waiting for the surgery. I was on the wait list for the surgery, and it became very severe again. And so it was different from the myfembree. The myfembree was intrusive suicidal thoughts. The Zoladex was suicidal thoughts that basically became out of control if I was alone. So I basically was unable to self-regulate. So what this meant is that, like, say I was away from my parents and I was alone, maybe, you know, it was at night or whatever, I would just start spiraling and I would start hearing these intrusive thoughts. If I was with my parents, I was able to like distract myself or stabilize and regulate my emotions and my mood based on my parents' mood. And the way that I knew that this was starting to come again, and this is very similar to menopause, at least my mom's experience with menopause, is that in the couple days leading up to this, I started to have my emotions right at the surface. I was very easily frustrated, but I was also very easy to laugh or very easy to cry. It felt like at any moment I could laugh or cry, but I could also just cry at anything. Like I would watch something on Instagram and just be like, wow, like that's so beautiful, or that's so sad, and just start crying. And that had also happened with the myfembree as well, but that's kind of how I had an inkling that this was coming next, was this kind of happened. And it happened probably a month before my surgery first, and we started another hormone med called Ch.320 to try to stabilize my hormones, and it did help. It took a week and a half to kick in the first time. However, it also made me on the verge of throwing up. Like my nausea became so bad that I almost threw up, and I rarely almost throw up. The nausea is just always there, but I'm rarely on the verge of actually throwing up. So I had to go back off of that because I can't just be throwing up all the time, and that was a common side effect of it. And so I went off of it, and then those thoughts started coming back and my depression became worse, and those symptoms kind of got worse again. And so then I tried going back on it, and I was like, oh well, maybe I can pulse it, right? So then the next time I was on it for 5 days, and the nausea came that morning. I mean, I talked about this on my vlog. I was in a doctor's office about to have an EMG test done, and I was like looking at different waste baskets, being like, which one's closer for me to throw up in, trying to hum, do all these things to not throw up. So I was there again, and it hadn't really kicked in yet for my motion. So since then, have tried a med, which is a very intense hormonal med for menopausal women called Premarin, and that one I believe has kicked in now and is actually helping my mood to stabilize. And so unfortunately, I might have to be on that med the rest of my life, as well as the Zoladex. We had talked about me going on antidepressants, but I do not want to go on more meds than I need to. And so right now I'm stable. And also, just for everyone to know, I'm recording these vlogs on the same day. The last 4 vlogs I've recorded on the same day, 4 vlogs including this one, because I'm feeling so good that in case I feel bad again, I want to get footage ahead of time. So who knows what's going to happen actually when this vlog is coming out, you know, 4 weeks away or whatever. But a week and a half after surgery, I'm stable. However, right before surgery, I was basically on suicide watch. My parents were staying with me 24/7. The 5 days leading up to surgery, I was with my dad. We like stayed at a place together, kind of like an Airbnb, and I just pretty much couldn't be alone because otherwise I would start to spiral with the intrusive suicidal thoughts. And that's so sad, you know, like it was very scary. It was a very out of control feeling. I felt like a live wire. I felt like my body was so in the fight or flight and survival that I was just like vibrating and just, it was awful. It was really, really horrible because I just didn't feel like I was in control of my body and my emotions and my thoughts. And so, you know, my mom was with me for the 5 days after surgery when I was still having those thoughts. She was with me before the 5 days before surgery when I was having those thoughts, and the ones before that. So my parents were basically, they're my caregivers, and they were kind of exchanging me so that I would have someone with me 24/7 to stabilize and not spiral. And so that was incredibly scary, traumatic. I was completely in survival mode, and this has been happening for 6 months, right, since December, and just had worse periods of time. But I've just kind of been, you know, on edge since then and not myself, and constantly scared that this could happen again because of the meds I'm on. And going forward, I'm also really nervous that this could happen again because I'm on the same meds. I'm just on the Premarin, which I think is leveling out my emotions, but I don't necessarily want to be on the Premarin the rest of my life. So we're kind of playing with this. We're figuring this out. Do I need to go on antidepressants? I don't know. But I want to be honest about this experience because so many people take meds that this is a huge risk for. And yes, it might be a small percentage of people have this, but it could literally happen to anyone. And even just people who aren't on meds who have, you know, this kind of stuff happen. It is so scary, and I'm so grateful for my parents, because I don't know what would have happened if they weren't here. And that's definitely really scary, and just stuff would impact me really hard, like the woman who died at the, I think it was Ohio State graduation by suicide and jumped off the stands, and her daughter was graduating that day and her family was there, and that really impacted me just because I've been in a similar place and I understand, and it's just so sad for her family and the people who were in the stands or on the ground and watched it happen. And so I just wanted to share my experience. That prompted me to, I've wanted to share my experience, but not while I was in it. And I've been out of it for, I would say, a little bit of time now, and everything's stabilized a little bit right now. But it's just so scary, and it's just such an out of control feeling. And I wish none of us had to go through that, and it really sucks, and mental health is so important. And just please check on the people you love. Please let people know that you love them, that you want to be with them in their presence, and if you have the capacity to be there for someone who is in a crisis, you know, please do. And I know that I didn't really reach out to pretty much anyone during this last crisis time because of kind of what had happened the first time, and I didn't want to put myself in that place again, so I just solely relied on my parents and my therapist, and I'm so grateful for them literally being with me like 24/7. Yeah, I'll never forget that. So yeah, so I hope that this doesn't happen to me again, or to like other, this just sucks. It just sucks. It's just so scary. But I wanted to share my experience because this is like what happened, and I'm still processing it. It is a huge trauma that I'm still working through in therapy. So thank you for listening, and I will continue to update you on this journey, this mental health journey. But thank you for being here, and I will talk to you soon, my friends. Bye.